The dining room looked less like a family gathering and more like a battlefield disguised with mashed potatoes and cheap decorations. Every chair was occupied. Cousins leaned over each other stealing food. Uncles argued about politics nobody understood, and my father stood near the grill acting like he personally invented fire. Meanwhile, I sat quietly near the corner of the table wearing my oldest hoodie while eating garlic bread like a man with no future. That was apparently my first mistake. My sister noticed me relaxing peacefully and immediately smelled opportunity. "Oh, look," she announced loudly while raising her wine glass. "The human version of free Wi-Fi has arrived." The entire table burst into laughter. I kept chewing. She pointed at me dramatically. "Seriously, he's always around, nobody knows what he does, and somehow he still costs everybody money." Even Mom laughed at that one. Dad nearly dropped his fork. "That's not true. Wi-Fi is useful." Another explosion of laughter hit the room. I slowly took a sip of soda, while my cousin nearly choked trying to breathe. Honestly, I respected the commitment to bullying. They rehearsed this nonsense like a professional theater group. Mom shook her head. "Your sister works 2 jobs. Your cousin has kids. Even your uncle sells barbecue grills online. And you." She pointed at me with disappointment powerful enough to lower property values. "You just sit around on that computer all day." "That computer," I replied calmly, "paid for this steak sauce." Nobody heard me because my aunt was too busy adding gasoline to the fire. "He's 30 and still dresses like a substitute gym teacher," she said. Dad nodded seriously. "Honestly, if we put him near a window, people would think he's a houseplant." More laughter. I checked my phone under the table. A new message appeared instantly. "Lyra, how is the primitive earth-feeding ritual going? Adorable human?" Another message popped up. "Lyra, remember not to expose your financial status again. Humans become strange when money appears." I smirked slightly. Unfortunately, my sister noticed. "Oh my God," she said loudly. "He's texting again. Is it that fake online girlfriend?" "It's probably a scam bot," my cousin added. "Maybe she's trying to sell him crypto," my uncle laughed. I locked my phone and continued eating. The truth was far funnier. Lyra wasn't fake. She was very real. 7 feet tall, silver-eyed, terrifyingly beautiful, and currently managing cargo routes 3 galaxies away. We met during a logistics contract 2 years ago after I accidentally corrected a shipping algorithm her company spent months failing to fix. Apparently competence is attractive when aliens are involved. Who knew? Mom dropped another pile of food onto my plate like she was feeding a depressed zoo animal. "You know," she sighed dramatically, "your father and I worry about you." Dad nodded. "Mostly financially." "Emotionally too," Mom added. Dad thought for a second. "No, mostly financially." The table laughed again. I didn't react. I'd learned years ago that silence made people uncomfortable. The calmer I stayed, the harder they tried. My sister leaned back in her chair with the confidence of someone who thought she was starring in a reality show. "You know what bothers me most?" she said. "He never contributes anything. Ever." Several relatives nodded immediately despite owing me money. "Interesting." She pointed directly at me now, enjoying the attention. "Seriously, tell everyone one thing you've ever done for this family." The room went quiet. Even Dad stopped chewing. I slowly placed my fork down beside the plate while 20 different faces stared at me expecting embarrassment. Instead, I smiled.
Small. Calm.
Dangerous. Then my phone buzzed again. "Lyra, please tell me you're about to ruin someone's evening." I stared around the table for a moment while everybody waited for me to either defend myself or collapse emotionally like a soap opera character. Instead, I picked up my drink and took the slowest sip of my life. "Well," I said casually, "I paid off the mortgage." Silence. Not normal silence either. This was the kind of silence where even the forks looked confused. Then Dad laughed so hard he started coughing. "Good one," he wheezed. "You almost sounded believable." My sister rolled her eyes dramatically. "Sure you did. And I'm dating a movie star." "No," I replied calmly. "You're dating a guy who sells protein powder from his trunk." My cousin spit soda across the table. Dad pointed at me while still laughing. Okay, seriously, enough jokes. I reached into my hoodie pocket and placed a folded packet of documents beside the mashed potatoes. Dad grabbed them first. His smile disappeared immediately. Mom leaned over his shoulder. Wait, what is that? I continued eating garlic bread. The mortgage release papers, I explained. The house was fully paid off 6 months ago. My sister snorted loudly. Those are fake. Dad's eyes widened while flipping pages. These have bank seals. Mom grabbed the papers next, panic growing on her face. Why would you even do this? Because foreclosure notices are depressing during breakfast. The room became uncomfortably quiet again. Then Dad's phone buzzed. He checked it automatically. His face turned pale. It says mortgage account close. My uncle blinked.
Wait.
Seriously? I nodded once. That was the exact moment the atmosphere transformed from mockery into survival mode. My aunt suddenly smiled at me like I was a celebrity visiting a hospital. You were always such a thoughtful young man. Interesting. 30 seconds ago, she compared me to expired yogurt. My cousin slid the dessert tray toward me. Bro, take the bigger slice.
Bro.
Amazing. My sister looked around the table in disbelief. Are you people serious right now? Dad sat down slowly like his legs stopped working. How much money do you actually have? Enough to stop eating instant noodles, I said. Mom narrowed her eyes suspiciously. What exactly do you even do on that computer? Oh, I replied casually, interplanetary freight logistics. Nobody answered. My uncle blinked twice. That sounds fake. It sounds fake because you still think NFTs are a retirement plan. My cousin started laughing so hard, he slapped the table. The best part was watching everyone mentally recalculate their entire opinion of me in real time. Suddenly, my hoodie looked minimalist. My silence became mysterious. My sarcasm transformed into confidence. Human beings were incredible creatures. Then my phone rang. Lyra. I answered without thinking. A holographic projection instantly appeared above the phone, causing my aunt to scream and Dad to nearly fall backward off his chair. Lyra's silver eyes glowed softly as she smiled at me. Hello, adorable human. Did your family stop insulting you yet? Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. My sister stared at the hologram like her soul just disconnected from reality. Lyra tilted her head. Why are they frozen? Did Earth finally outlaw bad haircuts? My cousin burst out laughing. Dad whispered, Why is she glowing? She's alien, I replied. Mom fixed her hair instantly. Of course she did. Lyra smiled warmly at the table. Oh, good. The parental units are alive. Your human told me they enjoy carbohydrates and emotional criticism. Dad looked deeply offended somehow. Meanwhile, my sister sat there completely speechless for the first time in recorded history. Honestly, that alone made the mortgage worth it. The entire dinner table stared at the floating hologram like civilization had personally betrayed them. Lyra smiled politely while resting her chin against her hand. Your relatives look emotionally fragile. They are, I replied. Please be gentle. No promises. My mother suddenly stood up and started adjusting the tablecloth for absolutely no reason. 5 minutes ago, she was publicly disappointed in me. Now she looked like she was preparing for a royal inspection. Dad cleared his throat and attempted to sound dignified. So, what exactly are your intentions with my son? Lyra blinked once. Romantic. Dad nearly swallowed his tongue. My cousin started coughing violently from laughter while my aunt whispered, She's gorgeous, loud enough for everyone to hear. My sister still looked frozen in pure disbelief. You're telling me, she said slowly, this alien supermodel is dating him? Lyra's glowing eyes narrowed slightly.
Yes.
Your brother is kind, intelligent, emotionally durable, and once stayed awake for 31 consecutive hours helping my company stop a cargo collision near Jupiter. The table turned toward me. I shrugged. Traffic was bad. Mom sat down carefully. You never told us any of this. That's because every time I opened my mouth, somebody compared me to expired mayonnaise. Fair point. Nobody argued. Then Grandma leaned toward the hologram with dangerous curiosity. Can alien babies glow in the dark? I nearly choked on my drink. Lyra answered seriously. Only during flu season. Grandma nodded like that was completely reasonable. Meanwhile, my uncle had moved from shock into greed. So, hypothetically speaking, if somebody wanted to invest in alien businesses. No, I interrupted instantly. But I didn't even finish. You were about to say something illegal. I could feel it. My sister suddenly leaned toward the hologram and smiled in the fakest way imaginable. So, Lyra, do you have any single alien friends? The entire table became quiet again. Lyra tilted her head slowly. For you? Yes, my sister replied confidently while fixing her hair. Lyra looked at me for 3 full seconds before answering. I do, she said carefully. But most of them prefer partners with personalities. My cousin screamed, laughing. Dad slapped the table. Even Mom covered her mouth, trying not to smile. My sister's face turned red enough to trigger weather warnings. This is ridiculous, she snapped while pointing at me. You let everybody think you were some broke loser. I leaned back calmly. You all seemed very happy believing it. Nobody spoke. That sentence landed harder than I expected. Because the truth was simple. I never lied to them. Not once. They just enjoyed underestimating me because it made them feel better about themselves. Lyra's expression softened as she looked at me through the hologram. You should have told them sooner. Maybe, I admitted quietly. But then I would know who actually respected me. For the first time all evening, the room lost its comedy for a second. Dad looked guilty. Mom avoided eye contact. Even my sister stopped talking. Then Lyra smiled gently. For what it's worth, humans are considered extremely attractive in several systems. Dad looked horrified. Why? Endurance, she replied immediately. Humans survive terrible food, emotional trauma, dangerous weather, and each other. Your species treats suffering like cardio. Honestly? Fair observation. Lyra looked back at me affectionately. Also, he's economically sexy. The entire table exploded laughing again. I rubbed my forehead while my cousin nearly fell out of his chair. Mom suddenly pointed at me suspiciously.
Wait.
Economically sexy means rich, doesn't it? I sighed. Dad leaned forward slowly. Exactly how rich are we talking? Before I could answer, my phone beeped again. A banking alert appeared across the hologram screen. Interstellar cargo, dividend payment received. The number underneath it was so large my aunt actually gasped. My sister stared at me with absolute betrayal. You own space companies? She whispered. I took another bite of garlic bread. Technically, I said, space companies own me. The meetings are exhausting. The energy in the dining room changed so dramatically it felt like I accidentally walked into a completely different family. Suddenly, everybody loved me. My uncle pulled his chair closer, like we were lifelong best friends. So, if you ever need help managing those space businesses. You once got banned from an online casino for cheating, I reminded him. That was years ago. I've grown. You tried using 2 fake mustaches. People change. My aunt slid another plate toward me with the tenderness of a medieval servant feeding royalty. Sweetheart, you've always been the most mature one here. 5 hours earlier, she asked if I planned to contribute to society before retirement. Amazing character development. Dad had entered full panic mode. He kept fixing his posture every time Lyra's hologram looked at him. At one point, he actually flexed his arms while carrying mashed potatoes. Mom smacked him immediately. Meanwhile, my cousin suddenly started calling me brother like we survived war together. One even whispered, You think Lyra's people need influencers? I stared at him. You got fired from a pet store.
Exactly.
I'm flexible. Then the front door chimed. Everybody froze. I frowned slightly. That's weird. My phone buzzed. Lyra. Open the door. Adorable human. My eyes widened. No way. I stood up and walked toward the entrance while the entire family silently followed behind me like confused villagers in a horror movie. I opened the door. Lyra stood there holding flowers and wearing a dark silver dress that made the entire universe seem unfair. The room behind me gasped collectively. Dad accidentally saluted her. Not waved. Saluted. Lyra smiled warmly before kissing my cheek. I finished work early. Also, your mother threatened to adopt me through the holocall. Mom pointed aggressively at Dad.
See?
I told you she liked me. My sister looked seconds away from emotional collapse. Lyra walked inside gracefully while every relative moved out of her path like she was a celebrity mixed with a natural disaster. Grandma immediately grabbed her hand. Tell me honestly, are alien grandchildren expensive? Lyra considered it seriously. Only during molting season. Grandma nodded again like this information was medically useful. Then my sister made one final desperate attempt to recover control. Oh, please, she scoffed loudly. Everybody's acting like he's perfect now just because he has money. I shrugged calmly. No, they're acting different because now they think I can help them. Silence. Again. My sister laughed nervously. That's ridiculous. I looked directly at her. Really? Should I mention the $6,000 you borrowed from me last year? Her face lost all color. Mom turned slowly. You borrowed money from him? Dad blinked. I thought you said your car repair drained your savings. It did, she shouted. I raised an eyebrow. You spent $3,000 on concert tickets. My cousin fell onto the couch laughing. My aunt whispered, Oh, this is better than television. My sister pointed at me furiously. Why would you expose me like that? I stared at her for a moment before smiling. Because apparently public humiliation is our family love language. Even Lyra laughed at that one. Then Dad suddenly grabbed his phone. Wait, why did the Wi-Fi disconnect? I calmly pulled out my phone and changed the password while everyone watched. Mom gasped dramatically. You control the internet too? Always have. Dad looked horrified. What's the new password? I smiled peacefully while sitting back down beside Lyra. Never contribute 123. The room exploded with angry shouting. My cousins begged for the password. My uncle offered me $50. Mom threatened emotional damage. Meanwhile, Lyra leaned against my shoulder laughing so hard tears formed in her glowing eyes. Then she kissed me softly and whispered, Humans are unbelievably chaotic. True. She smiled. But you're my favorite one. For the first time in years, family dinner became completely silent. Honestly, it tasted better than dessert.